Good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be here at Brussels Press Club today and speak on the key points of recent address of President of Uzbekistan, His Excellency Shavkat Mirziyoyev, to the Oli Majlis, Parliament of Uzbekistan, and the people of the nation. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Brussels Press Clubs and to the audience of European capital for giving the opportunity to speak on this very important topic. First and foremost, let me cordially greet you all and wish sound health and well-being in this very difficult and uncertain period caused by ongoing global pandemic. I want to bring your attention to President Shavkat Mirziyoyev's keynote address to the Parliament that was organized on December 29th last year. Uzbekistan's foreign policy interests are based primarily on the priorities of internal development. That actually means an obvious shift toward the economization of countries' international cooperation and the strengthening of economic pragmatism in our external relations and global engagement. For example, negotiations are nearing completion on an enhanced partnership and cooperation agreement with the European Union that should help create more favorable conditions for mutual trade and soften the foreign trade regime between our nations, but also lay down main directions in our overall cooperation with EU. Uzbekistan also achieved a significant progress in negotiations on GSP Plus status with the European Union. Uzbekistan began an active dialogue on joining the World Trade Organization to gain its worthy place in the world trade system corresponding to our resource and economic capabilities and human potential. All those very important matters were reflected in the speech of our president. Also today, Uzbekistan is actively formulating global agenda, building collective mechanisms to counter various challenges and threats that directly affect the security, prosperity, and sustainable development of the international community. Few examples. Clear evidence of this is adoption by United Nations family of 4 resolutions that designed to improve the foundations and mechanisms of international cooperation in tourism, regional interactions, interfaith understanding, and sustainable development. The head of our state announced an important proposals on the 75th United Nations General Assembly sidelines last year, which are as follows. Development of international code on voluntary commitments of all states during the pandemics, and the adoption of United Nations General Assembly resolution on enhancing the role of parliaments in achieving the sustainable development goals and ensuring the human rights. Besides the plans to hold several international events in Uzbekistan, there are another indicator of strengthening the role of the country in the international area. One of them is a global forum under the auspices of United Nations on human rights education, an international conference on youth rights, regional conference on freedom of conscience. Distinguished feature of today's approach based on proactivity in foreign policy. This is confirmed by the fact that by now Uzbekistan has become a member of more than 100 different international organizations and a party to more than 200 international multilateral treaties. The country's election for the first time in its history as a member of the United Nations Human Rights Council became a landmark achievement last year. As I told before, Uzbekistan resumed meetings of the joint working groups on the country accession to WTO last year after the 15 years of pause. Particular attention is drawn to the activation of Uzbekistan within the framework of another international body, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the adoption of the chairmanship in the Commonwealth of Independent States. The role of the public in the formation of the foreign policy agenda has significantly increased. In particular, the activity of parliamentary and people's diplomacy is growing. As a result, Uzbekistan has become a member of Interparliamentary Union, the OSCE Parliament Assembly, and the CIS Interparliamentary Assembly. The overall number of formed interparliamentary friendship groups reached 89. Last year, the legislative body adopted the concept of parliamentary diplomacy in Uzbekistan. For the last years, Uzbekistan has made a breakthrough in its regional policy. The issues of water use, delimitation and demarcation of state borders between Uzbekistan and neighboring countries, the use of transport communications and border crossings have been resolved. Uzbekistan has significantly intensified its participation in peace building in Afghanistan. The President of Uzbekistan paid special attention strengthening the intensification of work on the creation of Trans-Afghan corridor for that matter. The new principle that began to prevail in the foreign policy is the humanization of it. Thus, during the pandemic, more than 500,000 labor migrants returned to the country. The assistance of various kinds was provided to about 100,000 compatriots who found themselves in difficult situations outside Uzbekistan. Given above mentioned, the approval of the concept of foreign policy activity in new edition is intended to lay a solid foundation for conducting an effective foreign policy. Just finalizing my briefing today, I also would like to draw your attention that in 2021 we will be holding one of the most important events in our political life, presidential elections. This year, for the first time, elections are rescheduled from December to October based on the decision recently adopted by the Parliament of Uzbekistan. As it was mentioned by many observers and monitoring groups, those elections will be fully in the line of the international standards, and of course Uzbekistan is committed to demonstrate the full transparency and commitment to the international standards. Thank you for today's opportunity once again to speak and brief you on our recent policy developments.